It is a great pleasure to introduce the Honorable Ordway Teed in this ninth of the series of lectures arranged by the Civilian Defense Council of the City College. As chairman of the Board of Higher Education, Mr. Teed presides over the destinies not only of the City College, but of all four of the municipally supported colleges. He has brought to this important task a remarkable energy and enthusiasm and a profound faith in American ideals and in the democratic way of solving our problems. Of these problems, none is more pressing, whether in peace or in war, than that which is to be discussed tonight under the title Freedom from Want. Mr. Teed.
Ladies and gentlemen, I address myself to one of the four freedoms urged by President Roosevelt as the aims we fight this war to realize, namely freedom from want. Most people agree that it was out of the worldwide depression, despair, and want of the early 1930s that the Axis nations got much ammunition for their so-called New Order, National Socialism, and glorification of the state. It was a combination of good luck, American good nature, and a lot of good sense which enabled our country to go through this same period of terrific unemployment without a serious loss of national morale which might have flared up in public violence. Our efforts, which began with the President's inaugural declaration that the thing we had most to fear was fear itself, may not have been a perfect program, but it did in a broad way meet the worst inroads of widespread idleness. As a nation, we were able to weather this worst. And we now find ourselves launched into a world war requiring a maximum production effort which is reducing unemployment virtually to zero. But in relation to American war aims and peace aims, all this accidental change is not enough. It will be childish to have too short memories. It will be tragic not to look ahead to the period when, in some rather sudden way, an armistice will be declared, war contracts will be canceled, and the readjustment of some 30 to 40 million war workers to peacetime labors will be required, and some 3 to 7 million men will have to be absorbed out of military life into the normal pursuits of industry. America, I say, is fighting the war against want. It fights that war through the fact that it fights those whom want has aroused to hostility against our own potential abundance and its general enjoyment. It fights want also because want is today a condition of unnecessary insecurity, of unwarranted fear, and of economic as well as moral terror. Want may not be directly a great revolutionary force, but want is a disturber of the peace, and in a real sense it will stand like a ghost behind those who negotiate after the armistice and decide how we shall recover a society dedicated to a balancing of freedom and security. I can only mention how freedom from want can be practically realized as a part of the total war and peace aims. I address myself to America's freedom from want, not because I believe we can be permanently free of poverty while other nations are in need, but because a proper grasp of how our beloved land can be free will also suggest how our efforts relate to efforts in other lands to realize this same aim. Freedom from want requires at least four conditions: an absolute abundance of goods and services to supply the known biological needs of a given population, practical and agreed methods of distributing those goods to all members of the community, a widespread desire to employ those means to get a more equalized and universal distribution of the necessary goods, and four, an effective set of incentives to stir the people's desire and reward their effort to turn out the goods and to get them into the hands of those who need them. That there can be available an adequate supply of goods to allow all our citizens, at the least, a decent, basic minimum subsistence of food and shelter is established by study of our production, power, labor, and capital resources. This conclusion is well documented. At the level of a national income of over $110 billion, we should be able to lift the specter of want and destitution. But we should also make it a proposition for wide interpretation and understanding in every school and in every factory that we cannot consume more per year than as a nation we produce per year. At bottom, freedom from want depends upon a vast abundance of goods. This, in turn, depends upon a planned maximum use of machines, power, and the skills of managers and workers. Second, there have to be sensible methods for passing around all the potential output. Such methods include assured work opportunities for all, assured compensation during enforced idleness, illness, and old age, and assured methods of collective dealing to arrive at fair terms of employment. This plank in the platform means the following, especially in relation to the post-armistice period. It means that the kinds of activities which Mr. Galloway refers to in his recent book, Post-War Planning, be pressed forward vigorously. Specifically, it means planned programs for the rapid shift of our great industrial companies to needed peacetime products. It means a huge cushion of planned programs of public employment on such projects as housing, school and college buildings, roads, and other needed public investments, started by federal agencies to absorb workers not taken on by private companies. It means the keeping unimpaired of methods of collective bargaining as these are guaranteed under federal and state laws. Finally, it means the wider voluntary use of methods of union management cooperation for low-cost production drives, as these have, for example, helpfully been described in the recent book, The Dynamics of Industrial Democracy by Golden and Rutenberg. In order that collective dealing shall rise above the higgling of the market, it is from now on essential that the dealings of managers and workers be not only about how the income shall be divided, but how also the volume of output shall be increased to shared advantage. We have now plenty of evidence that the ways and means of doing this are at hand, if only the will to cooperate is present as between managers and workers at the bench. In other words, we cannot free ourselves from want unless we truly desire to. Our conscious desire to be more equal in the income we receive is a part of this total picture. If there is selfish obstruction to collective bargaining, if collective bargaining is itself selfishly centered on getting as much as possible and not on producing more, if managers, workers, or investors want to hold down output and push up their return at the expense of others, the desire for shared abundance will be defeated. Selfishness can seriously thwart our efforts to be free of want. This freedom, like all the others, is only in part one of material quantities. It is in part also a moral issue of the will to share democratically. And if this will is absent, freedom also flies out the window. I conclude with the suggestion that we will assure release from want also as we make it worthwhile for people to produce. Make it worthwhile for people to produce as abundantly as possible. It is good social sense, good political psychology, good economics to provide incentives in money and in non-financial ways for people to do their best work. Some pay differentials, some bonus for good performance, some awards for outstanding service are socially needed. Democracy not only can afford such differences, but it will reap great dividends in output from incentive rewards in pay, prestige, and status. This discussion does not assume the pig trough philosophy that happiness and wisdom lie only in full bellies and purple bathtubs. I do not urge a program to free us from want in order to waft us to heaven on flowery beds of ease. Rather, I believe in the power of the creative urge at work in human nature. True, it develops under struggle and tension. True, it has to be disciplined by each of us to bring us to our best personal growth and effort. But it is idle, on the other hand, to contend that want, hunger, and need breed virtue, culture, and character. They breed anxiety, physical depletion, and mental narrowness. Want and self-centeredness are companions. Freedom from want is the root condition of the flowering of the human spirit. Finally, these four conditions of reducing want do not work in an interrelated world economy for one nation alone. We cannot, as a potential society of free peoples, exist part in plenty and part in want. That is an invitation to aggression and the national rivalries that breed more wars. The ultimate freedom from want which America believes in and fights for is not a freedom for itself alone, not a prosperity at the expense of other peoples, not an abundance purchased at the price of holding less favored peoples down in misery. We seek freedom from want because we believe that with a widespread exercise of intelligence, science, and goodwill, the world can yield of its amplitude to feed and clothe all the sons of men without slavery or exploitation or imperial dominion. America fights for this freedom from want for itself and for other peoples because it has faith that freed from material anxiety, the human spirit will seek new worlds to conquer, worlds of humane and cultural fulfillment.
Thank you, Dr. Teed. Ladies and gentlemen, you've just heard Dr. Ordway Teed, Chairman of the Board of Higher Education, speaking to you on the topic Freedom from Want. Dr.